Hello everyone, welcome to part 4. This time we're going to be looking at creating a background for our game so we don't have to just sit with this boring blank rectangle anymore. And we're going to look at how you can expand your room to be bigger than just the default 1024 by 768, and also make a camera that follows the player object around the room, okay? This part of the tutorial is actually completely identical for the coding and the drag and drop versions of this particular series. We're just going to be working within the IDE, and there's no actual logic changes that need to be made. So this part is exactly the same if you're following along with the drag and drop tutorial, or if you're following along with the code tutorial, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is just going to quickly create some new resources. We're going to create the tiles that we're actually going to use for the background. So we're going to right click in sprites and hit create, and you'll notice if you're coming from GameMaker 1.x, we're not creating a background resource, okay? That resource is completely obsolete, it doesn't exist in GameMaker Studio 2. All images are just sprites now, and then we define that sprite as a tile set. So I'm going to create this sprite, I'm going to call it spr_background. And then I'll show you the image I'm going to import just from our tutorial resources. Not any of these individual tiles by themselves, but this collection of all the tiles. Okay, this particular image, tile 2 for me. Importing sprite, yes. Click that, and then you can see our lovely tile set. It's very important when you're creating a tile set to leave the top left square completely blank. Okay, you notice this is just transparent up here, and each of these tiles is 128 by 128. They can be whatever size you want as long as they're uniform, but just make sure the top left is blank. Origin point and so on doesn't matter for this because we're going to use it as a tile set, which you'll see in a minute. So let's close down that now and right click in tile sets and hit create. Okay, and we'll create our first tile set. I'm going to call it TIL_background because again it's just going to be the background of our room. Set the sprite to be SPR_background, the one we just made. And you can see that image appears with a grid over the top of it. Now let's change that from being 16 by 16 by default to 128 by 128. And you can see as I did that, the grid adjusted to match, okay, the tile width and tile height I set. And you can see the grid shows us where our tiles are there. And you can see the top left doesn't even have a box because that always has to be left blank because of how it works internally. Okay, so now we have a tile set. Okay, we've defined a tile set, that's all we need to do. There's lots of other options in here for doing cool stuff like building brushes and animated tiles and auto tiling sets, but those will be covered in different tutorials later on. Okay, so we can close this for now and come to our room editor. Okay, so back in here, now we need a tile layer to actually place some of these tiles. You can have as many of these as you want, but we're just going to use the one by clicking this button here that says create new tile layer, and you can see as we do that a new window over here appears as part of the room editor to actually allow us to select tiles that we wish to place. But first of all we need to move this layer down below our instance layers because we don't want the background to appear over the top of them. Okay, so make sure it's just down under here. Let's rename it. Let's call it layer_background. I'll do for now. And where it says over here no tile set, click this button and select the tile set that we just made, and you see it pops up and you can select the individual tiles. So with just this middle tile selected, in fact I'm just going to speed this up now while I just click and draw the tiles over the room. Okay, super simple. Feel free to pause the video while you do it yourself if you're following along, but yeah, you literally just click on a thing, drag it around to add the tiles. So now you've done that, if we run the game, you'll notice we don't just have that sort of boring black empty void anymore. We now actually have a bit of an arena to actually fight in. You'll notice I can just walk straight over these tiles and outside the room and everything like that. That's because we haven't written any logic or interactivity to actually allow us to or rather to force the player character to stay in the bounds of the room, but that's something we'll worry about at a later date. So go ahead and close that now. What we're going to do is actually make this room bigger. Okay, we're going to stretch it, make it double in size. So over here at the bottom, you may, like underneath the layer properties, which we can actually minimize, you can find the room properties. window, okay? And this is where you have all the different settings to do with this specific room, and right at the top here you can see width and height. So change width from 1024, which it is by default, to 2048. And you can see that's now doubled the game room in width, okay? If we were to change the height, it would do the same thing. Okay, I've kept it exactly double so that we have the exact same number of 128 by 128 grid in here, but you can make it whatever size you particularly want if you're using different size tiles or what have you. But this will do for us for now. Now I'm just gonna also, actually, before I do anything else, I'm gonna run the game now just to show you what's gonna happen if we run a game of this size. So as you can see, it's created a giant window that's actually wider than our screen. My screen here is 1920 pixels wide, and the room is 2048, so it's actually bigger than my screen, which is not what we want. So what we want to do instead is have it so we create a camera that focuses entirely on where the player is, so we can have a window that's still reasonably sized, but allow us to explore a larger room than necessarily our screen can show all at once, okay? So how do we do that? Let's close the game down now. And first of all, before I do that, I'm just going to fill out the rest of these tiles so that this room looks correct. Simple as that. And then over here back in the room settings window where it says room views, unfold this if it's not already unfolded, click enable views, and then where it says view 0 here, if that's not already unfolded, unfold that and select view visible. Okay, once you've done those two things, you'll see a big white rectangle appear over a default space of 1024 by 768. Which was our original default room size as well. What this does is it creates a camera. If you've not set any of these up, GameMaker does what it just did before and assumes your room size is the size you want the viewport to be. But if we've defined a view in the first room of our game, it will create the room, create the window at that size. Okay, so we only want the window to be 1024 by 768 and to initially cover this area of space where the player is. But we want it to also move when the player moves off the edge of the screen, and allow the camera to actually follow the player around the game world. Now you can do that sort of stuff with code and logic and interactivity as well, but there's a very neat built-in feature here called object following, okay, where in view 0 we can set this view to always follow obj_player, so it'll always try and keep instances of this object inside this view by moving the view to wherever they are. And you can also set a horizontal border and vertical border, which will determine how close the player needs to be to the edge of this view before the view will start scrolling to match its new location. 32 by 32 is pretty small, so we're going to increase that to 128 by 128, and just leave the speeds at -1, which basically means the view will scroll instantly as opposed to X number of pixels per frame at maximum. We want it to move instantly, so it always definitely keeps the player in the view. So if we run the game now, I've just pressed F5 to do that, and I move to the edge of the screen, you can see the view moves along with me, but it doesn't move outside the edge of the room, you'll notice. I can move outside the edge of the room, nothing's stopping that, but your view will not by default move outside the edge of your room borders, no matter what object following properties you set. Okay, and that's that. So this has just been a simple introduction to backgrounds, tile sets, rooms, and views, all at a basic level. Next time we'll be looking at text and how you can draw text to the screen using objects and logic and interactivity. I'll catch you guys then. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.